So, can you beat the prison heist in Dying Light without using any weapons? That's what I wanted to find out, but before we look at my attempt, I'm going to show you how to find the things that you'd need if you wanted to try it yourself, and also a great farming spot that's perfect for the prison runs. I've left timestamps in the description if you'd like to jump straight to my challenge right now though. Now I'm sure you've seen people beat the game without weapons before, but the prison heist can be quite a challenge, even with firearms. There is a bounty that unlocks after finishing the main game called Foul Jib, and that challenge was to complete the mission without ranged weapons, so basically melee weapons only and nothing that can be used from a distance. That challenge gets you the Zaghnal weapon, and I hadn't done it before, and I thought it might be good practice to try and run through without firearms for a change, because if I'm going to attempt this without any weapons at all, then this might give me a better idea of how much harder things might be. I'm not going to show you the full walkthrough here, as we'll look at everything in detail later in the video during my challenge. But playing on normal and at a decent legend level, it was pretty straightforward to be honest. I was using a wolf claw machete with an angel sword blueprint, and it was modded to over 5,100 damage. I was doing okay for a time too, right up until I had to fight Sergeant Death Row, that is. I'm used to just shooting him in the face with an 8,000 damage HTU shotgun. But it was so much harder to land a good hit with the wolf claw. Even when stunned, he quickly recovered, slapped me across the courtyard, and again before I could even get my bearings. After a couple of minutes though, I finally managed to remove his helmet, and it took another few minutes on top of that to finish him off, and I still achieved the master reward for a minute to loot the armory. But it was the Zaghnal that I'd done this for, and it just goes straight into your inventory as you get to the armory door. It's a mad looking weapon, and despite having less than 2,000 damage out of the box, it will one-hit demolishers with a charged attack if you add 3 king mods to it, so it's a pretty good tool to have. Now what you didn't see in that run was something that I think is really essential to completing the prison heist. There are sections of the prison where you need to be camouflaged in order to be able to pick the locks without having to waste time killing everything in the room first. And if the virals can't see you, then you can safely unlock doors without them attacking you. Now if you've reached level 9 survivor rank or higher, then unlocking the camouflage skill is a must, and once you've achieved ultimate survivor, then the amount of time the camouflage lasts increases significantly. However, it's often impossible to camouflage in the prison, as constant waves of virals attacking you prevent you from taking the time to apply the gore from the corpses. But there is an alternative called the cloak potion that can be drunk just like a booster, and you can only get it by finding a certain person in Haran called Dahlia, who by the way is rumoured to be a witch, and you can only find her after completing the school mission in the siblings part of the story with Jade. After doing that, you return to the tower, ride the lift up, and then you go to the trader and find this guy Jared who's hanging out with him. He tells you of the rumours of the witch who can walk among the infected, and after that, when you look at the map, you can see that she can be found at the Bazaar safe zone. When you get there, she'll be waiting in this room and seems to think that you're only there because she wishes it. I won't spoil the dialogue for you as it is quite amusing. You basically just have to do her bidding in order to receive a potion in return, but it's not that simple, and it does involve completing a series of tasks and then returning to her each time for the next potion, none of which will be the cloak potion just yet though. The first task is to go to the caves at night to pick mushrooms. The location is marked on the map and there is a safe zone right next to it, so get yourself over to it, make it safe if you haven't already, and then you just wait until night. The cave in question is full of volatiles during the day, and of course they go out hunting at night, leaving the cave much safer to farm. But there's still a few infected hanging around in the cave, so you'll need to be ready for that. You can gain access to the cave by swimming under the rock, but it's always worth opening the case here to get a disaster relief pack, and more importantly for the challenge, a pack of flares. After killing the biters, you can now pick the mushrooms, and you can find them by searching for these glowing green patches dotted around the walls, and there's a counter there that tells you how many mushrooms you have left to pick. Then you just go back to Dahlia to be patronised all over again, and she'll give you the shroom potion. She tells you to return when she summons you, but that's just her crazy talk, and all you need to do is go outside, try the potion, and then go straight back to her for the next task. Of course, the shroom potion is as crazy as she is, and it just reverses the controls so that left is right and forwards is backwards, so wait until you've recovered before you go back to speak with her again. The second task is to find and kill a goon for its liver. This one can be done during the day, and if you check the map you'll see areas marked as goon infested areas. If you don't find one in the first spot, then just move on to the next one, you'll find one eventually. The one I found was surrounded by biters, but if you've got a shotgun you'll be able to do the big guy pretty quickly. I was just having some fun with this new wasp weapon. Again, once you have the liver, go back to Dahlia to receive the liver potion, and again go outside to try it. It's a good idea to be off the ground for this one, otherwise you'd be vulnerable to attack. Drinking this potion slows you down to a snail's pace and you can barely move until it's worn off, but when it does, go back to Dahlia for another task. This third task is to find and kill a bomber. They're not marked on the map unfortunately, and you just have to look around till you get lucky, but once you've found one and you've got the liver, you know the drill, it's back to Dahlia for another crazy potion. Definitely get to higher ground before drinking this one, as it literally turns everything upside down and it's very disorientating. And but after it's worn off, back to Dahlia again, and I know this all seems like a bit of a pain, but we're nearly there and it has to be done to make the prison run more achievable. So this final task is amusingly titled Bring Me the Brain of Usain Bolter, and as it suggests, it's killing a bolter for its brain. Now, bolters only come out at night, and if you check the map again, you'll see a bolter feeding ground nearby and a safe house to sleep. The bolter can be found close to the safe house, and if you're quiet, you can sneak right up to it and take it out from behind. Get the tissue, get out of there before the volatiles show up, and finally, Dahlia gives you the blueprint for the cloak potion. But on closer inspection, you'll see that it requires 1 gauze, 1 bolter tissue, and 4 herbs to craft it. Gauze can be found all over the map in these first aid boxes on the walls, and if you're lucky sometimes you get 2 out of them. But where are we going to find the other 2 components? Well, luckily there is the perfect farming spot that's located at this safe house. It's right next to a bolter feeding ground and also right next to a herb field. But what makes it even more ideal is the fact that this location is also very near to the boat to the prison, and you can even see the boat from here. You saw earlier that I accessed the prison using the poster in the tower, but that only appears in the tower after you've travelled to the prison by boat. Once you get there, you can see the boat is moored up to your right. You can use that to fast travel back to the slums again after every prison run. Because after every prison run you end up back in this spot, so if you do run out of resources you simply travel back and make use of the farming spots. So back at the safe house, if you go to night, the bolter appears behind the bus, and when you've got the bolter tissue, go back to the safe house and then sleep until morning. Now, don't go straight back to night. You want to go around the back of the garage here and you'll find a field with the herbs, and that's the other component we need for the cloak potion. So yeah, there's a few biters here, so be careful, but once you've gathered up all of the herbs that are there, go back to the safe house, sleep until night, then go back out and find the respawned bolter, get the tissue, and then just repeat this process of going to day, herbs, to night, bolter tissue, and yeah, you'll be able to build up quite a good stock for your cloak potions. So, this spot's not just perfect for the cloak potion components though, it's also great for replenishing your resistance boosters. You'll need to be at least survivor level 3 to be able to craft boosters, but ideally need to be 6 or above to unlock booster XL, and that basically makes the boosters last longer. So what is the resistance booster? Well, drinking one will make you more resistant to damage from firearms or physical attacks, and for that reason it's an essential in any situation where the odds are stacked against you, and a must if I'm to complete the prison heist without any weapons. The components for resistance boosters are 2 herbs and 4 underwater algae. So we're okay for herbs, but what about the algae? Well, it's almost like this area was specifically designed for prison runs, as again, right near the boat is an underwater algae location, and you simply dive in between these rocks and the island over there to find the algae. They're easier to see from above rather than right down in the reeds, but they do kind of glow and flash, so it's not too hard to find them. So it's almost time for the challenge, but before I go, I just want to point out that there's a fisherman's village near this location. You may need to secure it first, but once you have, then there's a trader inside. So if you wanted to do the prison runs with weapons, then this is a great spot to come back and replenish your ammo. And if, say, he doesn't have quite enough rifle ammo for you, you can just nip around the corner to the sleeping bag, use the old sleep tonight and back again trick to restock the shop. Okay, now we're ready for the challenge. But there's still 2 more items that are a must for the prison, and that's the grappling hook and also flares to keep the volatiles away. Unfortunately, the cloak potion doesn't work on volatiles, and flares are the only thing that are going to keep them from attacking you. The grappling hook is unlocked at Survivor level 12. It's much more effective though if you max out to Ultimate Survivor, and I'd say that without one, your prison run would be almost impossible. You can see there that I've also got speed boosters in my loadout. Speed boosters are not essential for this challenge as it's not exactly going to be a speed run, but it will make the initial run up the stairs and getting past the defences much easier. Unfortunately, the speed booster needs toxic lichen to craft, and farming spots for it are quite far from the prison boat, but they're not far from Brecken's Tower, and you just need to find these little yellow flowers. So you can see that I have no weapons equipped, and my cloak potion is in the inventory, ready to swap out with the speed booster when I need it. I did have some C4 though, just in case I couldn't beat Sergeant Death Row, but I was determined to try and beat him with my bare hands before it got to that stage, and it was just a last resort. Standing at the gate, I downed the speed booster and the resistance booster before opening it, as that starts the timer, but once I was ready I ran up there as quickly as possible. I always take the alleyway to the left as the bulk of the enemies are in the middle here, and there's only one guy in the alleyway, so it's easy to take him by surprise and just barge right through him. You can see that I'm already taking a lot of hits, but the resistance booster is doing its job, and I got past the first checkpoint in 24 seconds. The boosters are still going, so I just ran around the corner, took the next guys by surprise again, and barged through the one in the doorway, round the next two corners, and then slide through the hole in the wall. You'll find a viral in here, but he can also be barged into the spike trap behind him quite easily, and now you can take your first breather. Whenever you get to this point, it's always worth checking that you've got the right loadout for the next part of the challenge, as there's a whole load of armed enemies behind this door, and if you run out of resistance booster, you'll be dead pretty quickly. This time, they weren't surprised to see me, and I take a hit right out of the door, but the boosters still protected me as I run up the stairs and I start punching the first couple of guys. I kept an eye on my booster indicator and had to drink another one pretty soon, but I'd failed to watch my health in the commotion and I got killed. I was really worried that I might get kicked back to the start, as that has happened to me before, but there was relief when I respawned back where I'd left off, so I topped up on resistor again and got back in there. As long as I kept an eye on my health and my booster, it was actually pretty easy and a lot of fun punching and drop kicking them all over the place, until finally the last one was dead and the light over the escape exit turned green and I grappled up there. Once you get through the door, you have to dash down the stairs because a bomber tries to ambush you. You run round the back of these crates and then down that hole there, and then you'll hear him explode behind you, but it's safe to continue once that's happened. So just vault over these obstacles, grapple over the electrified floor and go straight until you see this hole in the ceiling. There's a few biters up there, but I just barged them out of the way and dropped through the next hole, ran around the corner, and then after sliding through the gap I could take my next breather and equip my cloak potion, as this is where it's going to be needed first. It must be drunk before walking to the back wall, as that triggers a goon to bash through the door, and of course you need to be positioned to one side of the door to avoid getting smashed yourself. It also triggers a wave of virals, and without the cloak potion I'd never have been able to spend time picking the lock for the exit without having to fight them first, so you can see how important it is to have this stuff. But if you fail to unlock the door quickly, it's always best to back out, drink a little bit more potion, and that gives you more time, because to be honest it doesn't actually last that long. Once the door's open, follow the corridor all the way to the end and into the lift. If you look up, there's an open hatch. You just jump up there before the biter on the ground gets you, and after climbing up, you run straight ahead and then left to find another door. It's time to take another breather here, because you need to make sure you've got all of the right equipment, because this next room can be really tough if you don't get it right. So before opening the door, I drank a resistance booster in case it took damage, cloak potion for the virals and biters, and then made sure I had my flares equipped. As soon as I got through the door, I made my way pretty quickly to the exit at the back of the room and threw flares down to keep the volatiles off my back while I picked the lock. In my haste, I broke the first lockpick and took a big risk by not backing out for another booster and dropping more flares. I only just opened the door in time and some virals came through with me, but luckily the volatiles seemed to be stuck behind the threshold. It's still a good idea to close the door though to stop more virals following you through, as it gives you a bit of breathing space to move on to this electrified room and take an accurate aim at the door in the far corner. If you fall down there, it's a race against time to get back out without dying. Once across, you have to run straight to the lift at the back wall as another bomber appears from the right this time, and if you don't climb through the hatch and up the wall quick enough, he will get you. So after 8 minutes, I'd made it to the final stage of the prison and the end was in sight. It had been pretty straightforward up until this point, but I still had tons of virals, a couple of demolishers, and of course Sergeant Death Row himself in my way. I figured I'd only need a cloak potion to deal with most of them, and after jumping in, I was able to walk straight up to the demolisher and crack him straight in the face with a charged punch, breaking his helmet with one shot. And it allowed me to take out the virals on an industrial scale, literally just going from one to the next and snapping all of their necks. But then I made another mistake. The camouflage that you get from the corpses lasts longer than the cloak potions, and I wanted to save that as I was running out. So I applied some from one of the dead virals and realised pretty quickly that this then made me visible to the demolishers and I got smashed. I now had no choice but to waste another potion so that I could get close enough to take him out. There's no way I could punch him in the face without getting smashed. With them out of the way eventually though, killing the virals could be done with just the camouflage now, and it wasn't long before old Death Row smashed his way onto the scene. So, I now had 3 cloak potions left and thought that'd be plenty after killing the other 2 demolishers, but standing in front of him now made me realise that it was much harder to reach his face as being a freak, he's quite a bit taller than them. And it became quickly apparent after 5 charged punches having virtually no effect whatsoever that 3 cloak potions might not be enough, and as soon as it wore off he was reacting to me straight away and forcing me to run and hide to drink some more. My hopes were raised though after managing to smash his helmet off with 2 more punches, and it felt possible again, but I just couldn't seem to connect enough good punches after that, and I was pretty worried about my chances after realising that I'd finished all of the potion and was now going to have to try and finish him head on. And on top of that, the latest wave of virals had now seen me and were coming thick and fast, leaving me punching like crazy, and I came close to dying before getting a chance to use a first aid kit. I was at the 20-minute point now and it was just me and Death Row, but all I could do was let him charge at me and sidestep in the nick of time to stun him against the wall. But when he staggered around to face the other way, I still had to walk around in front of him again to try and get a shot in, but he recovered quickly, slapped me hard and threw a rock at me for good measure. I still had some resistance boosters, so I downed one of those before then trying to lure him into the fuel drum. And it worked, albeit blowing me up at the same time, but the booster kept me alive. The fuel drums didn't seem to be having much of an effect though, and he was only stunned for a moment each time, so I was now beginning to think about my emergency C4. He was even outsmarting me as I dodged his charges by changing his behaviour slightly and taking me by surprise. I'd never taken the time to study his routine before now, as I'd always just taken the easy option and shot him in the face. But I started to get a few good hits in after stunning him again and felt a final surge of determination, and at last, after 33 minutes and by far my longest ever prison run, he sank to his knees in defeat. And I still got a whole minute to then loot the armory for some good stuff before I left the prison for a well-earned break. So it turns out that it is possible to beat the prison heist without using any weapons at all, and I didn't need to use my emergency C4 after all. Of course that was on normal mode, so goodness knows how hard it might be to face Death Row on Nightmare with just your bare hands, but I guess if I'd respect my legend points to max out my unarmed damage, then it would have made it more likely, but for now I think I'm just going to go back to my firearms and maybe I'll try it again in the future. So if you watched this video to the end, then I thank you, and please leave a like and subscribe to my channel, and I'll see you on the next one. Cheers!